I did it. What was the button I pushed for that? Is it up here? It's over here. That's a weird spot for it to be. On the computer?
Go to cloud.
Not done that. I think we're good.
Hello, welcome to the Senior Literary Arts Reading Series for 2021. Welcome, everybody. I know that this is not what everyone expected this event to look like on your freshman year, if you were thinking about this moment. But I'm very proud for these 8 students and how they've persevered over these 4 years. I also want to thank the viewers for taking time out to come celebrate the accomplishments of these writers. Some of you may have joined via Zoom, so I just want to remind you to stay muted so it doesn't create any interference. If you're watching on YouTube, there could be a delay, so I don't recommend watching on both platforms at the same time. That can cause confusion. The 8 readers will present original works of poetry, nonfiction, and fiction. They'll read anywhere from a couple minutes to 7 minutes each. If anything happens to the connection, you can try to sign back on. We're also recording this, so don't fret. We will also post the recording. As seniors in high school, these young writers have accomplished more than many adult writers. They've written hundreds of pages during a busy 8-class schedule over a 4-year period. On top of that, they experienced this in the middle of a pandemic and during some troubled times. On top of that, they contributed to and created an award-winning literary and visual arts magazine. They won numerous local, national awards, regional awards, and they published various pieces. Even with their complicated lives, they continue to write and to read and to bear witness to the world around them and also to each other's important stories. The class of 2021 has grown up in a highly technological age and in a social landscape of climate change, gun violence, racism, healthcare reform, and more. They've marched in protests, they've written volumes of works, and they've sat restless in their houses for over a year. They've worn masks, they've learned how to pass classes in virtual learning. In their personal lives, many of them have encountered tragedies and disappointments. They've lost friends, they've lost family. Some of them have had personal illnesses of various sorts. All of them experienced a sudden end to in-person connection with the arrival of COVID-19. Some of them worked outside the home to bring in funds. Some struggled with depression and anxiety. It's been rough, but these students have been amazing through it all. They've shown up, they've kept going, they've created art. It may not have been on the level that they wanted, as some of them have said to me, but they created art in the middle of a pandemic. And that's a feat to be celebrated. And that's the purpose of this day. It's to honor these students' grand gift of wordsmithing and creation. I'm sure you will also enjoy these unique and important voices. I'm now going to say a few words about each individual student, and then the readings themselves will begin. The first reader today is going to be Elena Lee Asin. She's explored many genres in her time here, and she's helped literary arts in a lot of ways. She's been at Writers Fest, lifting boxes and sorting books and playing games. She sat in on so many writers' sessions, taking notes and listening. She works on a literary magazine. She's helped out with yearbook. She's worked on posters, and she's been at a lot of literary arts boosters meetings, which that might have been because her mother dragged her to those, but she always put her input into those. I always knew Lee was supporting the program, supporting the teachers, supporting other students. She helped me feel optimistic about the program and about the purpose of writing in a world that seemed to have lost its decency at times. Whether she studied violins or poetry or fictional realms, she studied seriously and with focus. I loved reading her fantasy realms and her moving poetry, and I'm sure you will enjoy her words as well. Christopher C.J. Slater is our second reader. He's a bit of a mystery to me, even after working with him in Senior Project and CC English for a year. He's a silent force among us, a deep thinker in the background. These days of virtual learning allow us to interact in various ways, and I look forward to seeing his insightful comments in the chat or finding a new version of a poem showing up in the work in progress that shows me an entirely new way of looking at the world. I know he loves the world of rock and roll and puppies and poetry, and anyone who can combine these loves is someone I want in my circle. I know you'll enjoy his work as much as I do. Adachi Amran will be the third reader. I can't believe this is the first year I taught Adachi in a classroom. I feel like we've been chatting about ideas in books forever. In thematic studies, we explore topics without boundaries. She's opened herself up to me in ways that I admire greatly. We found common ground in some very unlikely experiences that I think enrich both of our lives. I've learned so much about many important and valuable aspects of worlds beyond my own. Her writing is insightful and vulnerable and powerful and important. She makes you stand up and listen and then want to act. Adachi wants to change the world, so you better get ready for the change. Avianca Jackson is the next reader. The first piece of writing that Avianca shared with our nonfiction class was raw and vulnerable and straight to the heart, just like nonfiction needs to be. In that moment, I wanted to wrap Avianca up and take her with me and protect her from the world. But that's not who Avi is or what she wants. She wants to experience all of the world, to love it large, to live large, to embrace it all. She's experienced some large hurts in this world, but she knows how to heal and that it's through love, and she's ready to love large as well. You will hear her open and generous spirit in her words as she wants to reveal the next steps of her big and beautiful life with you. Jade Petaway, the fifth reader. I was sitting in my classroom, getting ready for open house 4 years ago, and a tiny voice asked me if I was Dr. C, and if I needed some help for open house. And there was Jade asking if she could help. My heart melted. From that day forward, Jade is asked to help out at various events and to promote the program. She's often worked for a bag of chips or maybe a half a bag of chips if I only had one. She'll often send me messages to uplift my spirit just when I need them. She'll often let me know when I've done something well, which students often, believe it or not, don't do. She's also an excellent thinker and writer, and she'll revise until she gets it just right. And I know you'll enjoy listening to what she presents today. She's a true scholar and writer. Yasmin Jabber, our sixth presenter, reader today. She tackles difficult topics and subject matters, but also sometimes funny ones, things light as well. She understands what it takes to win over a reader, what it takes to bore a reader. She's taken writing classes for years, but she's also now teaching classes and running poetry slams for Richmond Young Writers. She won the National Scholastic Portfolio Award this year. And I have no doubt we'll hear from her in the poetry and social justice realms from here on out. But today, she's just our Yasmin reading to us from her senior portfolio, and she's just waiting for her slice of Oreo dream cheesecake to eat after. So we'll just relish that. Emily Howe is our 7th reader. She's a wonderfully encouraging writer and person. She offers insightful feedback on poetry, on story, character, and plot. She's loyal, kind, and fierce, and amazingly talented. Her writing can take you on an emotional and psychological journey, or they can slam you into the earth and say, look at this, and doesn't let you go. Her work can be sarcastic and rough, or it can be dreamlike and soothing. Her range of voice is admirable and lovely. Allow yourself to enjoy this journey. It's like no other. Our final reader of the day will be Patience Wallace. She's a dedicated writer of fiction and nonfiction, and she's been recognized often for her work. She enjoys writing about family and childhood and how childhood memories can change as you get older. In her studies, she reads and writes voraciously, and she applies all of her learning to her detailed and solid pieces. You will hear some of her excellent work today as she finishes up our reading. You won't be disappointed. To all of the students, you are amazing, and I cannot wait to hear your words. Please welcome Lee Asen.
I'm Lee. I'll be reading 3 poems today, one from freshman year, believe it or not, so we can see how that goes. One that I wrote recently, just this year, and one that I wrote, I think, last year, but I've done a lot of editing on it, so. Great, first up is Sweetheart Who Breaks into Words. I can feel you dissolving into sound, breaking into syllables and hopeful fragments. What tone did he use to shatter you? Heard words echo, pain contained in ricochet. I see you sinking beneath onyx ink, losing yourself in crisp white pages by breathing in older stories, loving dreams no one had the heart to draw and see. You are rearranging yourself into new sentences, better guarded selves and shadow-proof statements. Sweetheart who breaks in delicate leaf-thin sheets and harsh vowels, do not let girl languages hold you. Sweetheart who bleeds, these frail pages are at home. Next up will be Forgiveness, divenire, Italian for becoming as opposed to being. For a week and a few days and nights, I thought of what to say and realized that there is nothing, but there is something to do, to fix, to make. Let me get started. I have nothing that makes any difference to you. No flowers, beautiful pictures, heavenly scented candles. I can't maintain the perfection you seek. There is paper, a messy room of books and neglected trinkets, paper tucked away for special occasions, found with perfect timing. The winter air you hate fills my room now while I work, calming and mocking. This is what I know how to do. Fold. Take a rectangle and turn it to a square, the square into a layered rhombus, a nonsense shape into a crane. 1,000 of these might grant us a wish. I have already made a few, cranes and wishes. You don't care for paper in its usual use. This and what it can mean matter. What else can I do? Okay, and this final piece is for kitchen reading. There you go. Her kitchen smells like spice and fire, clouds of vapor rising from boiling chicken broth in warm pots. Olive oil fills skillets stuffed with potatoes, chicken, pakora. Naan heats in the toaster, later set aside while more detailed dishes are prepared. Greens lay chopped on boards, waiting to join sauce and lamb. Peppers, onions, okra, carrots grown at home, bold under dull knives, split under newer blades, their scents entwining with other ingredients. She's standing there at the stove, hunched over the permanent stance, spine curved by years of stirring, cutting, tasting. always cooking, step by step, steady in theory, trembling slightly in practice. Nanu needs help reaching, dicing, rinsing, will ask the grandchildren for it. In alternating Urdu and English, her accent bleeds into speech like crimson from a sliced fingertip when she speaks. She's used to burns, cuts, a lifetime of kitchen work etched into softening hands. She chuckles and turns back to food. And next up, we have CJ Slater.
How's everybody doing?
Hi, CJ.
I'm going to be reading first a poem and then a short story, both of which that I wrote earlier in the year. 1936. The men in the chain gang strike their hammers to the ground, the force of each hit ringing back into their tired shoulders. They chip away at the rocks below them, as minutes slowly chip away from their time on earth. They sing songs of a life before in unison, each note and lyric ringing through the ears of the man directing it. Although he hears their stories, he is not allowed to understand them. He must stand still, unmoved by their words. The humidity cooks the prisoners from above. In the distance, they see a man in a gray suit walking toward them. He arrives and hands each one a cigarette. They light it using the flare of the sun. One by one, they puff the collection of chemicals out of the broken bodies and into the air. Nicotine, tar, and hydrogen cyanide, cooking their lungs to a crisp and adding to the heat of the world outside them. Soon after, they go back to striking the rock below, breaking the very ground they stand upon. And this is the short story. Wooden porch. The creaking sound of his rocking chair synced almost perfectly with the low volume tunes of Bo Diddley that a nearby speaker produced as each note sang through one of the few pieces of modern technology the man owned. Sounds of wind cutting past the objects on the farmland grew louder and louder as the man sat observant to everything around him. On his left lay his dog, a brown Labrador who he had seen every day for the past 11 years of his life. The canine lazily chewed a white tinted bone that his owner had given him a few days before, providing a top into the various background sounds that began to flood the old man's already battered senses. The fresh air of the Appalachian Mountains surrounded everything within the small farm and resources every breath. Moving back and forth, his sight of what stood before him in his yard made slight variations as the trees ahead would peek in and out of his view frequently. The setting sun projected a pink hue across the horizon of his West Virginia home that matched the tenor of his inner thoughts perfectly. With each passing second, the man would reflect on the events further and further back in the long tail that was his life. From his time as a farm boy in his very yard to his travels across the world in his military career, everything in his life seemed to finally circle back to where it began. He pictured himself the day he left the farm in 1943 to go fight overseas. The faces of lives he created and ended during his long journey stapled permanently to his brain. He remembered his father, mother, and siblings, all of whom he had surprisingly outlived over 96 years. His sons were now grandfathers and his daughters grandmothers on their own, living in completely different parts of the world. Everyone, even himself, had left the mountains, but he was the only one who returned and remained. He had been threatened, shot at, and even stabbed during his lifetime, but nothing rivaled the strange mixture of fear and reflection he had in his moment. Every memory he had left flew through his aged mind, as he scraped his fingers across the imperfections of his wooden rocking chair that felt the exact same way his life had. Thank you. Couple have a dashy animals.
Hi, everyone. So I'm going to be reading 3 poems. The first one is an excerpt. The poem's called The Children Who Come to Dance. 3. The memories spit the woman out when the water began to give birth. Ghostly beings squeezed from uterus of watery graves. They are born a symphony. Their jangling chains are metal lamentations. a psalm to a God who no longer rules their heaven. Hymns sung from a choir of drowned voices watch as they lean and clap to the praises of their own names. They tell the woman that this is not a graveyard. This is not a place where eulogies are read. Caskets aren't welcome here. This is not a tomb. For the boy who whistled, the boy who bought Skittles, for the woman who slept and woke up here with 8 bullets. No, this is a sanctuary. The sound of labor fills the air. Blue, indigo, black, translucent bodies sway to it. Dolorous harmonies waltz on a dead wind. The woman cries for the bodies, re-skinned, re-melanated, rebirthed. They surround her, wipe her tears, say, there is no sorrow here. We've only come to dance. They grab her hands and twirl until they forget their names, spin until new colors are created, choreograph a new language that only they know. It doesn't matter that they dance above their bones. And the next poem I'll be reading is called When Lightning Plays. There is a screaming storm in my throat. It starts with thunder's tiptoe across the sky, then rain ballerinas plie to the ground, and the birds are already gone because they're smarter than the rest of us. Or maybe they're just bilingual in bird and weather. I wonder what the storm said to the bird. The bugs huddle together, hunker down, spindly legs intertwine. They beg the leaves for protection, for shelter. They plead with the mud to not drown them whole. If they had ears, they closed them to the sloshing of soil that lost the fight with precipitation, to sides of roads that became lagoons, to trees who think they'll stand to see another century or two. And lightning laughs at them, the stubborn ones, the trees who think they can withstand time and gravity, a screw you to Newton and that one apple that fell, the Aslan of a world full of witches, but short one magical wardrobe. It snickers in their faces as it licks across the sky. The trees think their stubbornness is enough to manifest longevity. It's not. The lightning strikes the tree that stood tallest of all. It hits its center as it looks on in shock. Its gut splinters, the tree crumples over. Branches awaken as they're crushed. Leaves kiss a ground they've never met. The lightning winks at Newton and his apple. The tree exhales a CO2 cry of sorrow. In the morning, when the sky has emptied its stomach and thunder has taken its brother lightning to play elsewhere, and the rain ballerinas are practicing for their next performance, and the birds are out harmonizing with the wind, and the bugs are mourning their loved ones, bark bears a celestial burn, the scorched remembrance of a pride too high, and a heavenly humble that swung low. And my final poem was called When I Say I Want to Dance, I Want to. I want to catch rain in my hands and tango with the wind and harmonize with the birds and wrap my brown flesh in the silk of their song and dance, dance, dance until my feet detach themselves to start their private waltz, until I'm floating. The air ripples through my hair, asks my dark coils if it may have this dance, until I bound into space, join the stars' choirs. I want to be this organ, but my dance is the beat to their song. Stomping, shaking, grooving in the heavens. It doesn't matter who or what we're praising. Our masterpiece wakes up the sun. She shimmies over, red afro ablaze, grabs me by the hands as we two-step across the galaxy. And I smile. I smile so hard I almost mistake myself for sun. It wouldn't matter if my skin was melting off my bones because, baby, I'm golden. All that matters is the wind's tango, the birds' harmony, My foot's waltz, the air's romance, the stars' song, the sun's two-step, and this beat, this dance, Golden Girl, Dancing with Sunshine. Thank you. Bianca Jackson.
Hi, I'm Bianca. I will read a nonfiction story that I read earlier this year. I'm sorry you had to go through so many hard things in order to become who you are today at 18. I know it was hard. I wish you were less afraid and stood up for yourself, but it's made you who you are today. To my 12-year-old self, I'm sorry you were bullied and lost something you'll never get back because you felt pressure. I'm sorry you didn't realize that these things were meant to be brought to light instead of kept secrets. If only you hadn't broken up with the boy you were dating at the time for 5 months just to get with someone who didn't even go to school. He wasn't even anywhere close to your age, but you didn't know that because he liked you. I'm sorry you got hurt and tortured by that person by being forced to participate in things you never intended to do at your age. I know it scarred you, and someone you knew never failed to remind you of how stupid you were. But don't worry, because karma took care of the person who kept reminding you of it. To younger me at 13, I really wish you didn't have to act as if you were in a mental hospital in order to, or others to leave you alone and stop picking on you every day. This age was also hard, I know, but it kind of got better, somewhat. I know you wish to be smarter and fit in, but gladly you changed the stuff to being alone and dress how you wanted to, even though others picked on you about your clothes. I'm so very sorry that this was the last age that your hair would past your shoulders because you dyed it red, and on top of that, you were stressed a lot. Good old 14-year-old me. We had great times this time around, especially in 8th grade. You were doing fine until you got involved with the guys, but I'm proud that you overcame all these relationships. Having more than 6 boyfriends in that one school year. Girl, you could live the time of your life. The new girl that later became your friend is still one of your real friends today. She is someone like you, honest, quiet, and caring. I know at this age, this is when you were most stressed in life because your hair shrunk even more, especially in the middle of your head, it never grew back. It even hurt to touch, that's how sore it was. Every class was fun, especially in science, when we used to play truth or dare while working in teams in the back of the class after trying to complete an assignment. The relationships were extremely hard to deal with, and girl, you dated friends of your exes, which most of the boys in the class, and you did not give a damn. You were as bold as ever and very strong, plus you held your ground. I wish I could revisit you. The classes like math, when the teacher would be out of the room sometimes to grab papers, and it would be you and a friend against your ex and his guy friend play fighting. And you screamed, you begged your ex to put you down because you thought he would drop you on the ground. Or lunchtime where you sat at one table with a group of friends sharing fast food and gummy bears and old friend conversations that night on Messenger. I miss you because this was the best year of my life and my childhood. There's 15 and 16-year-old me. Love broke and took you apart piece by piece. School made you cry often. You struggled to get A's and B's. You compared yourself to others a lot because you thought everyone else was smarter than you are, but you are yourself for a reason. You were very hard on yourself around this time. You felt like you didn't matter. You really, really wanted to go to New York to visit family, a place where you felt at home and felt like you belonged every time you arrived in the city because your face lit up every time from seeing fashion stores in Manhattan, your favorite part, and the busy people. Whatever girl you pulled through. 15, my love, you were cheated on multiple times by a person who was a different ethnicity than you, who made you decide of each relationship he had without even knowing he was in one. And you found out when you finally got his password to his Instagram, and who you were in love with so much. They said you knew nothing about love because you were young, but we all know that you weren't in that category when you didn't know how to love. My sweet 16, you became concerned with other females, with the ugliest guy you were in love with at that time, and it drove you crazy, I know. Give and let go of it all. I know you didn't want to, but there's someone waiting for you in a few years. So free yourself from that pain so you can make space for better things. Almost an adult 17, you were given things from someone on the inside that made you forget who you are. I know you felt disgusted with yourself and alone, but it's okay to learn from your mistakes. You lost yourself in your direction completely, but you got clear and you fell in love with your life. You even lost your confidence, but I'm glad you got the everything you know you didn't deserve, but also made you stronger in the end. To 18, legal old me. You are still pushing through, about to graduate high school, engaged, and ready to start a career. You even create your second business with your partner, and put the other one on hold for regret. You teach yourself something new every day and exercise to go back to being in shape. You save money now and only invest in what you need. Hell, you got a job the first time, and you got your license. You spoke the truth regardless of who got mad. You accomplished so much at this age, and you really have become a better person. A smart, black, beautiful woman you are becoming and have become. I can see that you will become everything and anything you could ever imagine be seen as rare in the future. And you never forgot to smile. To my younger self, you built me. Thank you. And now, Jade Pettaway.
So, hello, I'm Jade Pettaway. Today I'll be reading you 3 poems that have all been inspired by influential people in my life, which include my grandfather, my deceased great aunt, and Lupita Nyong'o. So here's my first poem. His idea of love. Every Sunday, love is my grandfather parting his lips, raising his eyebrows, tilting his head slightly, in order to say with a stern face, save your money and be smart with it. Love is him enlightening me on the importance of economics, what it truly means to be Black in a society where Blacks seem to never get ahead. Low unemployment rates doesn't mean there has been an improvement in the well-being of us Blacks. He is always saying we have to work twice as hard, but what are we going to do to change that? So his idea of love is teaching his grandchildren and children about the stock market, bonds, real estate, the value of the dollar, and how important it is to invest in your own community. Your finances are key to a successful life. Always educate yourself. Knowledge is power every Sunday. This next poem is inspired by my great aunt and is titled The Call. You lay on the foam-inserted mattress in the readjustable frame while holiday bliss struggles to go through the house of your loved ones. As the knife cut the first slice of turkey, you endured a bladder obstruction. The second cut, fluids rushed in between the soft tissues of your lungs. The third cut, do-do-do. My uncle got up from the table. I'm sorry, sir, but we have lost her. The phone dropped on the mahogany floor, which glistened in the fluorescent lights. Your ovaries had failed you. On your favorite holiday, thanks for giving us the privilege of your existence, Aunt Lily. This third poem is inspired by Lupita Nyong'o and is titled A Poem Not Just About Lupita. They told her sister, when you are darkest is when you are most beautiful. It is when you are most you. Lupita Nyong'o. White teeth clasping words of wisdom, freshly dyed jet black hair illuminating ebony skin, glistening in the presence of the afternoon sun. Mouth, ears, eyes, heart, open wide, allowing her to flow, mix, the fluids quenching the sweet tooth of the soul, pigmenting the smallest delicacies of the body. Thank you. Hello.
Okay. My name is Yasmin, and today I'll be reading some nonfiction and poetry. So this first piece is an excerpt from my 4-part nonfiction piece called Evolution of Crush. Okay, this is identifying a crush, 3rd grade. The word crush was one of the most confusing things in my life until the 3rd grade. Crush was the cars squashed flat at the dump, moss running up their sides, and dirt fogging up their windshields. Crush was destruction, and closely followed decay. But when I came upon the word in books, it was always written with a tone of fondness. And then a few lines after that, it would be written with a pin of anger. Why are you angry with him, I would think, when you just said how much you want him to hold your hand? One recess in 3rd grade, a group of girls asked me if I had a crush on Jaden Blake. It was the start of the school year. Jean cutoff shorts were still in rotation, and there was a slight buzz of excitement in the air. These girls were the gossips, the TMZ writers of Crenshaw Elementary School. I knew whatever I told them would be all over 3rd grade in minutes. News about me wouldn't spread since I was pretty irrelevant, reading Allie Finkel's Rules for Girls over and over again and trying to get my novel published. But Jaden was the school's notorious bad boy. Everyone wanted to know everything about him. Jaden kept things interesting. He'd done everything from peeing through the chain link fence at recess to writing the F word in a few of the Scholastic Book Fair books. Despite all that, he was smart and cute, and he knew how to handle a lady. His ex-girlfriend wore 2 of his I Heart Boobies bracelets throughout their relationship, and I envied her for it. The thing was, Jaden and I had somewhat of a history together. In 2nd grade, he'd written me a note that said, "Do you like me? Circle yes or no." Our teacher, Miss Davis, had taken notes from other kids in our class and read them aloud before, so note passing was a pretty covert operation. I was sort of nervous. Obviously, I liked him. Everybody liked him. I scribbled "you" first and handed it back to him. He gave it back to me with a yes circled in green colored pencil. We never made it past that note, but every time I saw him, I'd feel my face warm up and suddenly I'd become hyper aware of every move I made. Is this a crush? Standing in the warm September air, my Skechers sinking into mulch, I felt my mouth shut. The gossiping girls took it as an admission of something and ran off squealing. I didn't know how to answer them because I wasn't quite sure what they were asking. I still didn't know if a crush meant loving or hating someone. If it was love, I could say no and laugh it off as a joke. If it was hate, I could say yes and still laugh it off. But because I wasn't sure, I couldn't say anything for fear of being truthful. I didn't love or hate Jaden. I just wanted him to ask me out so I could wear his cheap cancer awareness bracelets. It wasn't about how I felt. It was about what it meant to belong to somebody. After that, I decided to just ask my best friend Levita if she knew what a crush was. Was it supposed to be a good thing? She laughed like I had said something funny. I laughed too. It's just when you like someone, she said. It started making sense after that. Okay, this poem is called "For the Summer My Sister Met Me." The sidewalk is too hot to place bare feet on, and it's summer, and that's good, but almost too much. Air thick with sweat, eyes pried shut by sun, grass aggravated and yellow. It smells like hot dogs and Reynolds Wrap, sunscreen you don't believe you need, an incoming storm. Expectation is always propelled by something a bit more sinister than desire. She's mad at me. She wishes I was normal or at least presentable. I am without boundary. It's okay to disappoint everyone who doesn't matter. It's a failure to disappoint the people who do. I just want her to like me. My sister likes it when the truth is hard for me to hear. She's telling me I will never be accepted by the people I love. Little girls are barefoot in Virginia, and our feet are black on the bottom. Little girls squeal at black widows, take verbal swats at each other, cry on the hottest day of the year. And this is my final piece. It's called "I Don't Want Power." I was taught that fear should be reserved for things out of our control. Thunderstorms, tornadoes, floods. Allah's creations were the only things powerful enough to fear. I was 9, standing in the Universal Studios Twister exhibit when my dad told me that. "It's just man-made," he said, holding my hand. "We can't create anything scarier than what Allah creates." I felt foolish then, cowering at a false attempt at godliness. We can't make tornadoes, but we try, for our own amusement and recreational fear. The lesson becomes more complicated when we think about being afraid of each other. I wonder if people count as a laws of creation or just products of their environment. Are people just another man-made creation for fear and power, or a specific obstacle for people like me? Small, cowering people like me. I yell into microphones to feel powerful. I put on eyeliner to feel powerful. I ignore text messages to feel powerful. I don't go to class to feel powerful. I sing to feel powerful. I sob to feel powerful. I hate myself to feel powerful. I listen to talking heads to feel powerful. I write to feel powerful. I clean to feel powerful. I cook to feel powerful. I obsess to feel powerful. I stare at strangers to feel powerful. But in every attempt to feel powerful, there is an echo of helplessness that is louder than the initial attempt was. I want to feel powerful, but I don't ever want power. I think of power as the ability to hurt someone and never face one consequence for it. I think of power that can only exist with others permanently positioned beneath you. I think of power as that thing that makes you believe that stop, no, don't doesn't apply to you. I think of power as something that cannot exist without pain. Thank you. Oh, and next we will have Emily Howell.
All right, I'm Emily, and I'll be reading one nonfiction piece and 2 poems. Oh. Okay, so my first piece I'm going to be reading is my nonfiction piece, Blue Side, Red Side. Today, I can sense the judgment of the world upon my little shoulders. I have not been good. The AC's droning hum admonishes me now that Mrs. Edmonds' lungs are worn out. She slumps against the whiteboard, watching over her flock of sleeping 5-year-olds like the god that blesses my meals, her eyes pulled down by wrinkles. I stare up at the grainy ceiling panels as if trying to decode their secrets locked in braille, but eventually I grow tired of the frigid air and curl into myself, scrunching my eyes tight so that I can enter whatever dream realm my classmates entered long ago. No matter how hard I throw my mind against the barrier of sleep, I can't get the scene of my sin out of my head. Today, I pulled Lori's hair that was blonde and straight and smooth to touch, so smooth I could run my fat fingers through each strand and they'd fall back into each other, back into their neat little rows. Standing in our single file line with my hands on my hips and fingers on my lips, I began to covet for possibly the first time in my life. I coveted that which I found admirable, that which I could look at in the mirror and not abhor, unlike my own prison halo. And so, draped in the toxic fumes of orange juice and bleach that clung to the cafeteria like Elmer's glue, I was overtaken by Lori's perceived beauty and the glimmer of her hair. Hovering above me, her hair tainted by my palm sweat, she shrieked for Mrs. Elmond that I had touched her precious locks, and below her, all I could think was that my hands looked like red Play-Doh. From that moment, the day's fate was sealed. Now the flesh, my flesh, is pressed to the red side of the mat, the side that I turn it to when my name no longer resides in the green pasture on the color chart. Often during this time, I turn to my nap-time neighbor and trade giggles with him under the table until Mrs. Elman notices that even he's asleep. I turn to my forearms speckled with scabs. Half out of boredom and half out of disgust, I pluck them off like sticker briars. When I don't find smooth skin underneath each scab, but only a tiny pond of blood, I know that as much as I pick off my scabs, they'll be there for as long as I'm forced to stare at them. Snoring next to me is a girl who has long melted into the blue side of her mat. Again, I covet, this time for the peaceful dreams she must be having. I imagine that in her dream, she is a gentle, perfect princess, waiting for the rest of the world to catch up to the perfection. She has no scabs. All right, and the next piece I'll be reading is a poem called Greeting the Goddess. At the rooster's crow, I assemble myself, stretching skin caked in beige creams across each crack and bend of me, concealing each stain and scab. I step into a silk dress, hanging so low and rising so high, it barely contains what remains of the goddess in smooth indigo. I must threaten each fried strand I can find, tie it all in tight. Invasive light shooting through the bed blinds reveals my perfect form, and I just can't help but dance in swooping steps over this muddy carpet and slide jeweled fingernails down the wasteland I call a body. I am beautiful. All right, and the last piece I'll be reading is a poem called After the Indoors. These grass swords still can't be counted, even under youth's weakening feet. Plump pale legs glimmer at the glance of 10 a.m. sunlight. The vowels of poetry way down in the lap, and the ants sense it too. But right now, brain cells swim to the beats of bossa nova, cursed to stay cast down to a carpet of pine needles. And it's all right. The dragonflies ask too many questions anyways. Obligation stands no chance against wind's flights of fancy, and neither does thinning skin that's waited too long to let go of bones and to permit pores to expand and to breathe. Frogs rejoice at the start of the sun's surrender, and so does a quiet neighbor sailing towards the street, mowing his lawn. He knows to shield his eyes from Earth's offspring, to shield his eyes from this dimming organism. Thank you.
I have two nonfiction pieces. One is about my first writing award, and the other one is the first piece that I wrote at this school. So obviously it's been edited. I felt like I was going in circles, spinning like the spokes of my wheelchair wheels. I would visualize in my mind that instead of being stuck in the seat of a rented wheelchair, I was riding a Ferris wheel with laughter in my ears and cotton candy and popcorn smell filling the air. My wheelchair was navy blue with large numbers on the back, written in silver Sharpie. The armrests had small slits in them, revealing yellow foam under the textured vinyl. It would take a good bit of restraint to not pick at it. The chair had big metal wheels with rubbery muted grayish-yellow handrooms. Even after all of these years, I still remember the feeling of the cold metal of the leg rest against my ankles. I felt like a baby pushed around in a stroller while getting pitying and concerned looks from strangers, a question lingering on their lips, never spoken. What happened? Surgery. Surgery is what happened. I ended up having surgery on my foot, and I suddenly found myself confined to a wheelchair. Only temporarily, but it'd be 6 months before I was able to walk without any support. It was hard, never mind the pain, but it was the attention I received. Classmates who had never spoken to me before swooped in and were suddenly very interested in my life. I also didn't like how difficult and inconvenient it was. I couldn't ride the bus to school or even go to the bathroom alone. It was one more thing to add to my list of growing problems. But then I won. In 2016, I won 3rd place in the scenario writing contest state full through Future Folders of Virginia, my first writing award. 3rd place in the entire state, I was ecstatic. However, there was a problem. I wouldn't be able to walk across the backstage to receive my award. The thought of being rolled on to stage in front of hundreds of people felt daunting. I didn't want to go. Despite the hard work and hours spent perfecting my story, I was willing to fit it out. After thinking about it, I came to the conclusion that there'd be no way I'd miss that award ceremony, wheelchair or not. So I sucked it up. I got dressed in black pants and a black lacy skirt, a single black flat, and my surgery boot, and my trademark headband. I gathered my family and made the hour-long trip to the ceremony. And then I was there, shaking nervously on the side of the stage while waiting for my name to be called. My heart had betrayed me and was trying to break out of my chest, but it didn't. We made a split decision that I would walk at least a step or two to receive my award with my mom following me close behind with the wheelchair. They called my name and an eruption of applause filled the auditorium as I hobbled a few painful steps to my award, my face burning in embarrassment, but a big smile painting my lips. I had really won on the state level. There wasn't a better confirmation that I should follow my dream of becoming a writer one day. Even despite everything, I was still a winner. I'd love to say that was the end of my troubles, but in reality, it was still a long road to recovery. I went from a wheelchair to a knee scooter to a cane. I hoped I could finally move on. Instead, chronic illness entered my life. However, this memorable moment still prevails. Good things can still happen, even in a tragedy. There are flashes of sunlight and rain life or gloomy situations. You can't let blessings pass you by because things aren't going as planned. That lesson has stuck with me for years. That was my first piece. My second piece. The dinner date was at Olive Garden. I've been waiting to go there for years, but my mom was allergic to garlic, so it was out of the question. I quieted, feeling nervous since I hadn't spent time with him. Just the two of us. Oh my God, I forgot to say that. This is, my piece is called Daddy Daughter Yoda. This is a snippet of the piece, so I said that first. I quieted, feeling nervous since I hadn't spent time with him, just the two of us, for a while. I'd also never been on any kind of dinner date. My dad took my hand in his, my warm hand complimented his cool one. He opened the door for me, happy chatter, and a gust of cold air threw me a bit off balance. The fake grapevines and the aristocratic paintings blended in with the chestnut-colored walls, complementing the brightly lit bar and the dark leather seats. I expected to be greeted by the overwhelming scent of garlic, but it just smelled warm, the kind of smell that fills your kitchen when your mom or grandmother is cooking. A waiter walked up to us and led us to the fairly packed restaurant to a table for two. He asked us to order drinks. My dad got something simple, water with lemon, typical for him, and I ordered a strawberry lemonade, non-alcoholic margarita. I'd never had any kind of margarita drink. Despite it being non-alcoholic, I was still ecstatic about it. I had sat there, taking in my surroundings, focusing on the smells and sounds of the restaurant. I remember feeling excited and content, if not a little uncomfortable. I didn't hang out with my dad often, so I was expecting to be over the moon, but it was weird. I felt so silly in my black dress with a zebra print front. The dress didn't fit me right. The shoulders were too broad, the dress was tight in some places but too big in other places. I just felt so displaced, like I shouldn't have been there. I felt alienated. I was extremely aware and embarrassed about my low V-neck. I pushed the creeping sadness away, tried to ignore my bitterness about my father not spending more time with me before now. I feel like I missed out on the years I should have had to get to know my father. After some moments, my dad and I decided to work through a large laminated menu. I couldn't help but think about my father and I being big foodies and how we both love to cook and bake. Like Star Wars, food is another thing my father and I have in common. I think about the American Girl Daddy and Me book that my mom had bought for me. It had stiff, noisy pages, the cover decorated with turquoise polka dots and an African American girl and her father whipping up an outlandish stack of pancakes. As soon as I got that book, I could almost see myself recreating the scene with my dad. Him in his crazy apron and chef hat, laughing and making pancakes. I reread the book so many times, hoping to do activity. I begged and begged. We finally made apple pie pancakes, but they were soggy and bitter. I was disappointed. My dad ordered stuffed shells, and I ordered the Torres Italy dish. My dad smiled, his white fluorescent teeth gleaming as I rattled through the breadstick sauces. I'd always wanted to spend more time with him. Our date felt like a dream. Then my dad started telling corny jokes, snapping me back to the present. When I was younger, he'd given me a number of joke books, occasionally asking me if I had a joke for him. I'd run up to my room and grab my book, flipping through the worn pages until I found the perfect joke. I think our favorite joke was about pickles and cucumbers. Even with his bad jokes, I couldn't restrain my laughter. I laughed to the point I spilled the mock margarita drink down the front of my dress. My dad smiled, but never laughed at me. There was a quiet and happy, wistful feeling my dad and I were actually on a date. We didn't talk much, but I knew he loved me and that meant the world to me. A couple of moments later, the buttery breadsticks with a good dose of garlic came along with a steaming 5-cheese marinara sauce. My father had pasta shells, oozing ricotta cheese, drowning in red sauce, topped with melted mozzarella. I had layers upon layers of pasta with beef and cheese crammed in the middle, all of it topped with the sweet tomato married to cheese. I also had pot noodles marinated in creamy Alfredo sauce with dry chicken and a side of garlic. My final food item was a slab of lightly fried chicken that resting on a bed of yellow noodles, all of it swimming in warm marinara and shredded like cheese. But on the bottom of the fried chicken breast, it was dead burnt. While we ate, we discussed the Yoda movie, and I suggested another date for 2021 to see the movie. He smiled and said, "Well, it's a date then." I'm pretty sure he actually pulled his phone out and added it to his calendar, even though this was like 2017. We continued to talk about Star Wars. Star Wars was a big thing and my dad and I always connect on. I feel like the main reason Star Wars originally interested me was because of my dad, but I fell in love with the series too. Star Wars has always been my thing. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us in whatever way you joined us. And that is it for our 2021 Literary Arts reading. So one more round of applause.